Welcome to MSP Voice, the weekly show for MSPs by MSPs. Brought to you by Cloudberry, the #1 cross-platform cloud backup. Learn more at cloudberrylab.com. This is MSP Voice. Hello and welcome to MSP Voice. This is episode number 8. Today we're bringing you a new weekly feature we're calling the Best of Reddit, where we're going to go through the MSP subreddit and we're going to pull out some topics we think may be of interest to some of our listeners. You'll be able to find links to all of these posts in the show notes. So if you're interested and you want to go comment and reply or just read them, feel free. So first up is someone asking if anyone has stepped into the consumer/residential market, meaning people in their homes. Now, this is kind of a funny topic. Some of the responses are pretty good, but probably the most practical response is from someone who says, Geek Squad charges $99 a year. Why would you want to compete with that? They provide remote support, they have AV, and it's only $99 a year. So, people can go to Best Buy, sign up for Geek Squad. That's kind of, who you're competing with. And if you think you can do it for, less than $99 a year, then, maybe you're not serving the customers as well as Geek Squad could. Others, they'll kind of go into that whole residential consumers are a pain in the butt, so to speak. I'm being nice there, but essentially saying their PCs are messy and junky and caked up with stuff, and all other MSPs that maybe had done it previously and then merged with another company, and then they kind of got out of the residential consumer market altogether just because it was too much of a pain. So basically what the Redditors are saying is don't do consumer, let Best Buy handle it with Geek Squad. Next up, we have someone asking if you would be mad, I'm putting that nicely, if a customer took your quote and shared it with your competitors to try to compete on price. Now, this is something that, in the software world and the services world is actually pretty common. You want to shop around, you want to try to get the best deal. Now, if I'm someone, I'm going to say, hey, what, I can get this product over at this vendor for this price. Can you match or beat that product? Now, when you're talking about something like a tangible good, like a computer or something like that, then price is negotiable, I guess, or it's not really that much of importance because you're getting a thing versus a service. When it comes to MSP, you need to feel confident in your pricing, and that if the services that you're offering, if that's what the pricing that you have set is, you need to be confident in that. Now, they may shop it around, and if the customer shops it around and they say, well, guess what, vendor B is going to do it for $100 less per month, you can say, well, that's great, go with vendor B, because you may not want a customer that's going to be shopping around, always looking for price and driving the price to the bottom. You have to feel confident in your pricing. And that's pretty much the general consensus of what most people are saying on that one. Next up, we have some career advice. We've got someone who currently works at an MSP in the help desk, and he recently accepted a position as a manager. He has no manager experience, and he wants to, now he's in charge of 18 engineers. So I thought there was some good advice on this one. I actually upvoted the one about reading some books on management. That's a great way to kind of learn and understand other people's styles and how they manage people, and kind of look at those types of things. Others, have some really great advice about don't be a micromanager. You act as a shield to upper management and those types of things. So really a lot of good kind of career advice on this particular Reddit about becoming a manager and kind of what to do and how to do that. Next up, we have someone who is going to be looking at a contract for a law firm. So he's asking anything specific, law firm specific for MSPs. So, most people are generally saying, hey, look, they're just like any other customer, although they do have some specific needs when it comes to software. So you may want to look at things like dictation. There's some other things in here, attorney software, LexisNexis. So there may be some specific software requirements, but generally they're just like most customers. Now, other people have, of course, chimed in because lawyers are notoriously cheap. Even though they might make a lot of money, they don't like to spend it. So that's something you need to watch out for as well, is they may badger you on price, And lawyers are typically good negotiators, so that's something else to keep in mind if you start negotiating a contract with a law firm. And finally, we have something from Cloudberry. Yes, Cloudberry. We did a survey of our MSP customers. So understand that this is a subset of customers that are Cloudberry, subset of MSPs who are Cloudberry customers. So it's not necessarily, representative of everyone out there. It's just Cloudberry's typical customers. And what we found in the survey, there were some really interesting results, and we kind of went down and summarized some of them in this post. We also have some links there to the infographics so that you can kind of see what's going on. I thought some of the comments were interesting. This has generated a lot of comments. A lot of people there were a number of comments about VoIP being least profitable, and people have jumped in and saying, look, typically VoIP is just a handshake. You pass it off to the VoIP vendor. They provide that. You get 20% margin. That's instant profit. Others say if you roll your own, which can be difficult, you can look to 70 to 80% of profit. So there's some definite opinions there in regarding to VoIP. There's also some opinions in regards to advertising and what works and what doesn't work. So based on the survey, a lot of our respondents don't necessarily like to use a Facebook. In terms of marketing, but they understand that Facebook is one of the best ways to do that marketing for those channels. So while 37.6 say social media, the biggest number, 25.8, say that social media is the most effective marketing channel for them. 46% do email marketing, but only 24.7% said that it was the most effective. And pay-per-click was pretty low down there. Paying for Google AdWords and those types of things was only at 15% in terms of most effective. So some great discussion there on our survey. Take a look at it. Feel free to chime in with your own info and experiences, and we'll take it from there. So with that, that's our best of Reddit. Now let's move on to the interview. Today we have Kevin Bissinger from Dentek Systems Incorporated out of Texas. So with that, we'll transition over to the interview. Thank you. Hello and welcome. Today's guest, I have Kevin Bissinger from Dentek Systems. Happy to have you on, Kevin. Why don't you give us a little information about yourself? Tell us where you are, where you work, all those types of things, and we'll get started.
Sounds good. Hey there, Doug. So yeah, like you said, my name's Kevin. I work at Dentek Systems. It's an MSP that focuses mostly on the dental and medical vertical. So, we've got a lot of regulations and stuff we've got to deal with. I've been doing IT work for literally as long as I can remember. I think I broke and fixed my first computer when I was like 8, because my parents said, don't use the computer when we're not home. And I did, and then I broke it. So I had to learn how to fix it. And I kind of fell in love from there on, and I went to a lot of really nice public schools, and there was always some kind of legitimate computer education, not just like typing. Like we did web development when I was in elementary school, and did hardware and troubleshooting stuff when I was in high school for a few years, and programming and Java, all that other fun stuff in high school. And the passion just kind of grew and grew and grew. The more you learn about technology, the more exciting things become, the more excited you become about your future. And then started working in some enterprise IT environments, help desk, field support kind of stuff. Kept kind of learning, growing, started learning programming, developing back-end stuff a little bit to try to be more helpful and supportive to the other departments, and kind of nudged my way in and then worked my way up. Started my own little MSP retail company on the side with a friend of mine who we had worked together for a while when I worked at Fry's Electronics.
Okay.
And so we kind of built this little company, worked at it for a few years, kind of came to the realization that I'm not really the kind of person who handles that endpoint pressure very well. So we had kind of started the business on a whim, and so weren't really prepared for how expensive it is. And we did all right for a few years. I mean, we got capital, got a couple investors, we did all that, but it just, the pressure ended up being too much. We kind of stepped back, got some part-time jobs, and then those part-time jobs ended up taking priority because it just, you know, it became too much to manage. So then I ended up trying to find, you know, okay, well, if I don't want to work for a mindless corporation and I'm not necessarily ready to work for myself yet, where do we go from here? And ended up looking around for a while and found this company, Dentek Systems, through I think a recruiter, and talked with the owners, talked about the history of what I wanted, what they wanted, made sure that we were sharing a vision and had some alignment, because I've had a lot of different jobs. I've done everything from door-to-door sales and being a janitor, a gas station attendant, to you know, owning and operating my own company, or even a CTO for a little while for someone else. So I kind of run the gamut, and I wanted to find a place that would let me leverage the knowledge and skills to kind of help somebody else grow. Like I'm one of those people. It's like I don't necessarily want to get rich. I just want somebody else to appreciate me making them rich. And you think that would be easy to find, but it's I also require a lot of attention to execute that vision, and so it requires someone with a lot of patience. And you know, you got to mesh well. Yeah. And so I started off with them. It was essentially starting off kind of as like just tech support, but it really quickly just kind of blew out of that. And eventually I ended up doing this presentation for the owners, like a whole SWOT chart, like strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, to show them why just taking me out of the support team would benefit them. Like I know it's good that I'm able to help directly with all this stuff, but I think business-wise, there's a lot more I could do for you. And so, you know, it worked. I got pulled out of there, you know, because by that point I had already taken ownership of a lot of the responsibilities, because it was a lot of gotta find diplomatic ways to word things sometimes. There was a lot of choices for what to do, and sometimes that can be overwhelming for people. And so I would kind of just slowly take ownership. Okay, you know, we have these RMM platforms, we have these CRM tools. Look at all this integration with the vendors that we support. Why don't we implement that kind of stuff? And then it just basically kind of get it done and then utilize it, and the company benefits and grows, and that just kind of snowballed, and you know, here we are.
Cool. Sounds you know, it sounds like you really took charge of your career, you know, something that, you know, a lot of people sometimes don't necessarily do. Is, you know, you feel like, okay, well, I'm in this spot, you know, how do I move up? And it sounds like you really just kind of took control and said, you know what, I know I can do more, I know I can do better. And you took control, you did the SWOT, and moved yourself up. So that's great. Good career advice too, by the way.
Yeah, you just got to be careful with that kind of thing, because when you get given that much kind of free reign, like when you gain that trust and responsibility, it's very easy to overexert yourself to try to prove your worth. Like, oh, they believed in me, let me show them why that's a good idea. And then all of a sudden I'm working 16-hour days on average, and it was entirely my own fault. And everyone's like, why are you always so stressed? It's like, well, I'm overworked, I'm this and that, and this is like, well, nobody's asking you to do that. It's like, I know, but it needs to be done. So like, it's, you gotta find that work-life balance. Unfortunately, we were able to, like, with the owners and I have a very close relationship, and they can kind of sense things a little before I can now. And so they were able to kind of help, be like, hey, what's going on, and discuss things, and then realize, like, you know, that's one of the nice things about the way a lot of companies are going now, is they recognize that work-life balance is a critical part of success for your employer, especially in IT. I mean, burnout is so prevalent.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there was a study released the other day that, I mean, I think it was over like 70% or something of IT techs are burned out already, like already burned out. The existing one's there now. So you really got to pay attention to those kind of things when you're trying to run a company too.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing, and I know I've sometimes had issues with this in my career, is learning how to delegate, right? Yes,
That's with my biggest
you know how to
thing.
do everything. You're kind of a control freak. You know how to do everything. You know the way it needs to be done, but yet you also have to trust that there are other people that can do it just as good. And that idea of, okay, delegate that responsibility. So.
Yeah, the hard part for me to accept is that sometimes you still have to delegate even if you know the result you get won't be as good. Like it's just important that sometimes things get done because you don't have 1,000 arms. You can't be everywhere at once.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's the reality of it.
Yeah. Now, so you mentioned that you focus a lot on dental and medical. And the name Dentek, kind of implies dentistry. And some of your testimonials on your website are from dentist offices. So I want to talk about HIPAA here in a minute, but yeah, because that's an important topic that a lot of people are interested in. But kind of before that, how do you, in terms of business, is it mostly word of mouth? Do you advertise to these different practices? How's the?
It is
how does
exclusively
that
word of mouth,
process go?
actually.
Okay.
Yeah, that's one of the fun things. Excuse me. That's one of the fun things about the company is it's a very, like the culture internally is very kind of, everyone feels like a family, and that's actually kind of where the core of the business started. Was there was like a lot of friends and family in the industry, and the owners were IT guys and sick of working for the man. We could do it better ourselves, we treat people better ourselves, so on and so forth. Same dream I had when I started mine, but they actually pulled it off. So they kind of just grew organically from that, and then became kind of the leading name among a lot of vendors and other partners too. So our word of mouth advertising not only comes from clients, but comes from a lot of the practice management software companies as well. We'll work with them a lot of times directly to help support their platforms, like as an extension of those systems. So it's all organic growth. There's no real direct marketing. There's no, and that's something that I did when I had my company. I was all about SEO, social marketing, the whole thing. Direct engagement, kind of direct community engagement. Create a brand and a platform, and not just a corporation or a company. Like have an identity, and I think this company is getting to the point where they're about to start rolling that out. But it's been almost pure organic growth through the entirety of the company.
All right, so now let's talk about probably the thing that you love the most: regulations.
I actually do. I'm on the spectrum, so I love rules and formulas. If you could tell me exactly how something works A to B, then I love it. So that thing is perfect. You need security. I know exactly what you need. You need to have local and offsite backup. You need to have network port hardware. All that other fun stuff. I know what you need because I've got these rules. So I legitimately love it. But it's funny because it is a nightmare to deal with, though, because the level and the way that they punish you is ridiculous. But, I mean, it's your personal information. It's about taking care of you and your health, and that's like one of my project managers. I was kind of explaining to him. He was like, "Well, what's the point of having every server role on a separate server?" And it's like, well, it's about lateral movement. It's about escalation privileges. If you have these isolated services, then when an attacker breaks in, they've compromised one service. They don't get everything. When you have everything on one physical server, that's it, you're owned. And that's why they have those rules. It's like, oh, okay, it makes sense. Like, yeah, all these rules are there for a reason. That's the part that people don't understand. It's not, well, they don't understand that I'm a tiny little office and I can't afford, you know, $20,000 of computer equipment just to make sure that I'm meeting some stupid regulations. It's not a stupid regulation. You don't need it till you need it. But the point is they know you need it because they have to deal with having to pay all this money to recover from the damages caused by these breaches. I mean, every day on the news, you're hearing about instances where people, I mean, how many times are there Banco viruses? Like, I mean, I hear about one every 5 or 10 years, and it's always catastrophic, the amount of money the government loses when this happens. And that's why it's there. I mean, it's not designed to make people broke.
Yeah. So, I mean, is there anything that you guys do special for those I mean, obviously you follow the regulations, but do you kind of, you know, it sounds like, you know, you have everything mapped out, you know what the rules and regulations are, so that way when you go into a customer, you know, you can say, this is what you need to do. Is that kind of a standard practice that you guys have as far as the regulations go?
It's difficult coming up with standard practices and regulations when it comes to this industry, because we're fighting a battle with history. I mean, these are people who've been in business for 20, 30, 40 years doing everything on pen and paper. And all of a sudden, 10 years ago, some bureaucrat tells them, you have to throw all that away. You're not allowed to do that this way. You have to move over this way. And so there's kind of, I'll just say that we don't necessarily have the luxury to have that, even though it's a legal requirement, and I understand that, and we understand that as a company, we're also trying to do business. And so you don't just say, hey, we're not going to work with you because you won't do this. You know, there'll be certain exceptions and stuff in place, but we've got, generally speaking, kind of tools and a couple of vendors that we rely on to help take care of the regulations aspect of it. Because the nice thing is it's so massive, especially with GDPR and everything, is almost all of these types of compliance issues have been automated. There are tools, companies like Rapid Fire Tools. I think there's another company like Black Talon Security. There's a lot of places where they've got you know, scanning tools and diagnostic tools that really dig into your systems and pull that information out for you. And some of them can even go so far as to give you like exfiltration risks with dollar signs. And that stuff comes in handy when you do need to sell to somebody who when they see dollar signs, that's sometimes all you need. Yeah,
this is how much it's going to cost you if something goes bad. So definitely.
Yeah, and the other nice thing is, the other nice thing is there's, well, not nice thing, it's a sucky thing for them, but it used to be, I don't have to worry about this because I probably won't get audited, but they shifted the regulations, I think last year or the year before that, to now it's 100% audit. They're increasing compliance rates, and now everyone's getting audited. It's not an if, it's a when now. So you've got to be prepared. It's going to be just like OSHA. It's going to be, you know, you better have your binder. You better have your business associate agreements. You've got to have all your bases covered. You got to have your compliance officer. Otherwise, I mean, a lot of these issues, if you still have a Windows XP machine in your environment, that's a $50,000 fine immediately. I mean, per instance. Yeah. So it adds up really quickly.
Yeah, I'll check that next time I go to my dentist. I know they use Windows. I'm not sure if it's XP or not, but
yeah, I've learned it may not. Don't be too harsh on them, I guess, when you look around.
No, I won't. Keep an open mind. It would just be for my personal, you know, I'm not gonna say anything to them. I'm just gonna say, oh yeah, okay, maybe I shouldn't go to this dentist anymore.
That's kind of what I meant by it. It's a lot of them, they just don't know better. It might be better to tell them, because I can't tell you the number of people that, because I feel like I hit a brick wall sometimes when I try to sell certain people, and you know, I mean, I did sales for a while, but it's not my thing. I don't. And you know, after a certain while, when you hear a certain feedback, that you kind of get expected if that's what you think. So I'm always shocked at how many times I casually mention like the fines for non-compliance for certain issues, and their eyes just become saucers. They're like, "Oh my goodness, really that much?" It's like, yeah, I had no idea. It's like, how? This is your business. Like, so many people I've told, like, fine, I don't worry about it. Like, you just kind of expect that's why they all don't do it. Some people just don't know better.
So you mentioned, something you mentioned as part of the regulation is, this idea of a compliance officer. Now, do you guys provide like a virtual compliance officer? Is that like a service that you offer, or do they have to pick someone within the practice to be that compliance officer?
I mean, in a sense, we basically perform that function now, but it's not really something that I'm having a hard time describing it specifically, because I can't. I talked with the owners about what I can and can't say, and I gotta try to tread carefully about secret sauce and stuff like that. But it's best for the practices to have their own person on site, and that's what you're supposed to be doing, just like you have kind of the OSHA compliance officer. You need someone who's aware of it, so that when the guy comes in, they know where the binder is and they know how to whip all that out. But it doesn't necessarily require that you get compliance certificates or have any kind of special training or awareness. It's just mostly, this is the person who's designated to answer the phone or talk to the person when the government calls.
That makes sense. So let's we'll switch away from regulations now. You obviously kind of got your start in services. You did a number of things, and you had your own business. What kind of advice do you have for someone who might be working for the man right now, and kind of feels like he or she could do better on their own and go out and do it? Any advice for someone who wants to get started in IT services in this business?
Okay, so my first piece of advice is don't. And if you'll take the advice, then this job isn't for you. If you'll take the advice of me saying don't do this, then you shouldn't be doing it, realistically, because almost every small business, almost every business that starts off fails. It's pretty much a guarantee. You've got to be stupid or crazy to start your own company. But that's the thing about genius, is it's hard to tell, where that lies. But if you do go ahead and make that jump, the most important thing to make sure that you do is remember that in IT, you got a lot of smart people. And a lot of times people focus on metrics. And when you've got smart people, a metric can become a target in a way that you don't want. If you say we need 80% first call closure, you'll get it, but it may not be what you really wanted. You might have wanted to make sure the customers were satisfied and the issues were completely resolved in the first call. Not that the ticket was closed, but you set the metrics, you get what you want. And I've seen a lot of people start off with this idea of, if we create the most rigid, stringent process, then we can hire the stupidest people and they'll do a perfect job. And it doesn't work that way, because we're all human. So that's been, I think, the biggest pitfall, is people forgetting the human element.
Okay. So what do you consider the best part about being in the managed services business? Some of the best parts.
I would have to say it's the flexibility and the experiences. I mean, if you're in any of the IT communities, the one thing you hear is working for an MSP is IT boot camp. You go in there, you will learn so much. The amount of tools that I got, like when I worked for Texas Health Resources, this huge hospital network in Texas, basically the whole state. They have they follow HIPAA and high tech to the T. And at they also follow ITIL to the T, and it's often at the cost of getting the job done when you're used to cowboy IT, like, oh, I'll pull this, whatever, you know. And so the tools that were available and used in the systems there were amazing, but I got access to 1/1000th of what they could do. And in working at an MSP, I've got open doors to Amazon Web Services, everything in Azure, Google Cloud Services, all these different pieces of hardware and software, all this technology. I've got a like this rack server that I just repurposed for whatever I want, whenever I want it. It's like 54 gigs of RAM and like 32 cores, and like it's an insane monster that I've been able to just requisition parts for to build out. It was originally running a lot of our infrastructure, but we moved that to the cloud because I mean, we can't afford hardware failure. We're an IT company and we're reselling services and hosted services, and so at a certain point, it's like the cost doesn't make sense. Like a day of downtime starts adding up when you're making money off that device. So we moved all that to the cloud, and then we just had this beast of a server just sitting around. And so, like the freedom to basically have a home lab without having to invest any of the money myself, and the experience of working with all these different technologies and all these different management platforms and tools and vendors and all that stuff. It's a big wide open world where you get the opportunity to learn things trial by fire. And it's amazing.
Yeah, I know that's, you know, I've done consulting work in the past, and that was always kind of the, you know, the fun part is each project or, you know, each client is different, and you get to learn new things and those types of things. So it's you know, there's the technology side, but then there's also kind of the business side where you're like, oh, this company does this. It's like, oh, well, I guess some company needs to do that, you know. And it's just kind of weird, you know, the type of companies that exist. So that's kind of the best part.
We have like a mushroom farm as a client. I was like, I didn't even, okay. I mean, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay.
Somebody's got, you know, restaurants get them from somewhere. So,
yeah.
So what about what's kind of the worst part of managed services? What are some of the things that
it kind of falls in that same realm of you've got to learn everything?
Yeah.
And then I think the other hardest part is that when you're working as the MSP, you know you've got 1,000 clients, but when you're the client, you only have the one MSP, and so those interactions work out that way. They come to you with the expectation that I'm the most important person in the world, and honestly, they deserve to be treated that way. That they chose you as their client, so they deserve to have that expectation. But a lot of times it's impossible to meet their expectations, and setting realistic expectations is also impossible because there are so many one-man shops out there who can give people that kind of attention and dedication, but then you've got the bus factor. If they get hit by a bus, what happens to your stuff? You've got that one guy with all that knowledge locked away. Now, sure, we can't always get it done. We can't think of you, like, we don't know, oh, I recognize your voice. I know exactly who you are. You've been our client for 20 years. We love you. It's, you know, you might get a guy who just started, doesn't know, you know, that's the gamble you take. But the nice thing is he's got tools and resources there to support him that a single guy can't afford. There's just no way. That's why we can't compete with them on cost. But that's why we offer value. Like you get those trade-offs, and it's just when you're at an MSP, the pressure can be exhausting and mind-numbing. I think the average recommended time to stay at an MSP is about 3 to 5 years. That's where you'll get the ability to learn a lot and grow a lot, but that's also where you start to really stretch yourself too thin and go crazy. And if you burn out in IT, a lot of people never come back, and that's sad because I mean, the way technology is going right now, I mean, it's insane what cloud services have done. I know everyone's like, oh, cloud, I hate cloud. What a stupid term. Cloud, you mean somebody else's computer, ha, ha, ha. It's like, no. That's ignorant. That the reality of it is that cloud is enabling a infinite API library, Babelfish, like where you can take any program, document its APIs, and then put it in your translator and have it just open it to webhooks for any website, anything, whatever you want to do with whatever level of access control, and then push out all these types of like containerization functions for like, I mean, I think that's really my favorite thing is containerization, honestly. Cloud deployment of like Kubernetes and containerization, I think is going to change the way software deployment works, because our biggest nightmare as an MSP is hardware compatibility, hardware and software compatibility. If we're able to abstract that away, oh my God. I mean, if I could give literally every customer a $50 zero client and then push it from a $50 a month per end user service, and they get literally everything their hearts desire, and we never have to go on site to replace a bad network cable or a bad this, or I mean, network cable is probably the worst thing, but we probably still want to hardwire it. But you know, removing all of the layers of complexity, like just ship them out a new USB client if they have a problem, or my favorite thing, like the shift to VDI. The client's having an issue. Anybody else having an issue? No. Tell them to reboot it. Problem solved. Like that's it. That's the whole problem. Like to remove those layers and to abstract that higher, I think is amazing. But the nice thing too is that Azure, and I think a lot of the other guys have really taken somebody else's computer concept into mind, and like you can have a full Azure stack running in your own data center if you want. Yeah. Like just the extension of it on.
Well, yes. Some companies are a little afraid to give up that control. So you know,
they want too. I mean,
they want the whiz bang, you know, of the cloud. They just don't want it in the cloud. They want it still in their data center. So it makes sense.
Yeah. Well, and the worst part is a lot of people who make that jump. Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead. People to make that jump.
I was gonna say, a lot of people who make that jump, they get a little overexcited and they don't research how to manage the budgeting first. Because I learned that lesson the hard way, just like most of us are. If you don't pay attention to what you're building, you still pay for it.
Yep.
Even if you delete it or shut it down, the costs still go up. Like when I was still building in it just to develop on the back end before we had put any of our production or internal stuff over there, I think I had gotten the cost up to like $700 a month. Like just because the stuff that I had built up and torn down and didn't realize was costing anything. And somebody's like, hey, what's going on with the cost? I was like, what do you mean? And that's now my dashboard is a big, nice, you know, cost projection thing on there, but like it'll get away from you.
No, I definitely agree. So it sounds like, you know, one of my next questions is what technologies you're most excited about, and it sounds like you're really excited about containerization and cloud. So I think you already answered that part. What are you most worried about in terms of technologies? And you know, it can be anything.
Blockchain, but it's a good kind of worry. I worry that people aren't taking it seriously enough, because the potential to shift the entire industry of industry with blockchain from a sense of asset management is beyond comprehension. I mean, there's IBM, Cisco, and a couple of the other huge guys have been working on a blockchain technology called Hyperledger, and it distributes. It takes the idea of like the you know, same Bitcoin and Ethereum type. Oh, we've got all these distributed nodes, but it separates them even further out, because they built this with the idea of how do we make a blockchain for enterprise, and they have consensus nodes, which is basically the same thing as what all the other blockchain techs do, but they also have like approver nodes, and I can't ever remember what the third one is, but they basically have some kind of compliance and regulation nodes as well, but they're still consensus nodes as well, and they're still based on, they have to agree with each other, but you put that compliance into the hands of people who have that level of required compliance now, like the government and compliance agencies and stuff like that. And I see a lot of companies that, like, basically, I'm worried that people following cryptocurrencies are going to have the term blockchain tied part and parcel with that. And they're going to think, blockchain, oh, that means volatility, that means instability, that means theft, and that means black markets and drugs and you know, all this and that. Yet it's like, they're not. And that's the biggest thing that worries me, is because if we can get people to embrace the concept of blockchain, create an immutable asset record, then you create something that allows you to track like a piece of medical equipment that gave somebody some disease, all the way to exactly what farm grew the corn that made the plastic in the packaging, and what exact kernel, maybe not kernel level, but what cob or bucket or whatever level they decide to use to demark on that product. You know exactly who, what, when, and where, and why every part of that chain is involved. The issue with healthcare's costs in America is with secrecy. That's really what it boils down to, is all of the issues are there because all these decisions are made behind closed doors, and there's nobody who you can hold accountable. And with blockchain, that everyone knows exactly who did what. The entire transaction is available to everyone. And if we don't make that shift now, then it's basically going, you know, authoritarian versus not egalitarian, but closer to that. Like we're democratizing the access to the technology to make sure that everyone is accountable. And if people don't, if the cryptocurrency volatility goes the wrong way and every government starts regulating against all that stuff, and I'm worried that this concept might kind of fall at the wayside, and then we'll lose out on an opportunity that could be a game changer.
Got it. So with that, I think it's time for our rapid fire round. So this is meant to be a little fun. It's not too serious. Don't think about it too much. Couple quick questions, and then we'll wrap it up after that. So starting off, Apple or Android?
Apple. I hate it. I hate to say that, but Apple. Just if you're gonna make me be simple, then I have to say Apple.
It is simple. Mac, Linux, or Windows?
Linux.
Okay. Amazon, Azure, or Google Cloud?
Azure. I'm not happy with my answers because they're one word. Like there's all S. Like it's technology, but that's
it depends, right? It depends, right? But
they've all got their benefits.
Yeah. So I think I know so local backups, cloud, or both.
Both, of course.
Yeah. And of course, which is worse, printer support or vendor cold calls?
Jesus. Oh, man. Actually, printers.
Printer support? Okay.
So many
and you probably
times,
have to deal with a lot. You probably have to deal with a lot of printers with your customers. So.
Yeah. We're working on getting them away from that, showing them benefits of centralized storage and stuff like that. Like you don't need to print everything.
Yeah, just
the whole like, oh, I got this email, so I printed it out so that I could scan it and then save it as a PDF on my computer. But, oh my God, you could have just saved it.
Yep. Understood. So, any last words before we part ways here?
Yeah, I guess. keep learning. Never stop learning.
Okay.
That's my central motivation in life. Everything that gets me through, every reason I wake up, and the best advice I can give to people, and I mean, kind of covers everything. Just always keep learning.
Definitely understand that. Okay, so with that, thanks everyone for listening. Again, Kevin Bissinger from Dentek Systems has been our guest today, and we'll see you again another time. Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you. All right.